Cadillac to Katahdin to Sugarloaf, USA.
We gotta take the power back.
It's the George Hale, Ric Tyler Show. Welcoming the man that signs your driver's license to the PDQ telephone line, Secretary of State Charlie Summers on GHRT this morning.
I don't mind him signing my license. Can he fix any tickets?
Well, let's see. Well, let's just start with the license, you guys.
Right.
Charlie, welcome back to the George Hale, Ric Tyler Show. Lots of talk about so many bills in Augusta. I don't think any bill so far this session's gotten more attention than LD1, and there's a lot of regulatory reform in it, and you wanted to talk about that this morning on the George Hale, Ric Tyler Show.
Well, yeah, first of all, guys, it's good to be back on the show with you, and you're right. There's been a lot going on in Augusta these days, as reported almost daily. And with the regulatory reform bill that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are well aware of, the legislature traveled around the state, held public hearings on ways to reduce regulations on business while still protecting the environment. And also, one of the things that has come out of this bill affects the Secretary of State's office directly, and that is the legislature is creating a first-in-the-nation small business advocate within the Secretary of State's office. And the whole idea behind this is 98% of the businesses in Maine have 20 or fewer employees, so they're all basically small businesses. And many times these businesses run up against difficulties with state agencies and really have no other recourse than to go back to that agency that may be fining them or penalizing them in some way and try to ask them to police themselves, if you will. So the idea behind this is if a small business feels particularly aggrieved by an action of a state agency, they can go to the Small Business Advocate, which will be located in the Secretary of State's office, which, as you know, as a constitutional officer, we are kind of an independent body. We don't work for the governor. We work indirectly for the legislature. So they can go to a third party, kind of an independent party, plead their case, if you will, and then that advocate can go to the various departments, discuss that with them, try to work something out. If that doesn't work, then the advocate will be authorized to directly contact the governor and say, this state agency has done X to this small business, and something needs to be done to address that.
Well, there was the regulatory commission. It was a bipartisan commission that worked on all of these things, and there's this environmental self-audit program that's out there that I don't know a lot about. This is the one that strengthens business assistance in the Department of Economic and Community Development, right? Well,
yes. Within another thing that this bill does within the Department of Economic and Community Development, the DECD, is it provides for a small business ombudsman, if that's what you're referring to, George, because what this position will provide someone to try and walk a business through a process like environmental self-registration, things like that. Someone who can kind of help people cross the T's and dot the I's. That, I think, is an important step forward as well.
Charlie, let us ask, we're having a bit of trouble, not to get too political, we're having a bit of trouble finding an economic and community development commissioner in our state. Do we have someone to be this small business advocate, this ombudsman or woman to be in the Secretary of State's office and grab this bull by the horns?
Well, yes. Actually, we're trying to lean forward on that right now and anticipate the signing of the bill, because the bill has been passed out by committee. It will be voted upon by the entire legislature and then obviously sent to the governor for his signature. And once that happens, we will. I think, we've approached this very kind of conservatively, if you will, monetarily wise, because we've had the money set aside in the budget with an empty position within the Department of Secretary of State. So we are not going to the legislature and asking for more money for this position. And we are currently looking right now to try and find 2 or 3 candidates that will, I think, provide the type of leadership that is necessary for this. So I think we'll be able to hit the ground running. We've got some good ideas on people that we could bring into this position. And I think by doing so, again, it's going to provide business an independent voice, a place for them to go where they can have kind of their day in court without incurring the expense of hiring lawyers. During the hearings, for example, there was one small business down in Maine that was doing environmental remediation. The DEP was trying to force that business to hire a certain contractor. The business didn't want to do it. They had the financial wherewithal to hire a lawyer, but they got tied up for 2 years in court. A lot of money was spent. They were successful, but then the DEP decided that they wouldn't send them any more environmental remediation contracts. Ended up causing the business to go out of business. Those are the type of scenarios that we're trying to prevent, where an agency is actually taking punitive actions towards a small business. And that, I think, those are the scenarios that we've heard so much about, that we're trying to provide some voice for a small business so they don't have to hire a lawyer, incur those expenses, because most businesses don't have that kind of wherewithal to do that. And I think that this position is going to go a long way toward alleviating those problems.
On the phone with us, Secretary of State Charlie Summers. We're talking of this position now within or soon to come to the Secretary of State's office, a small business advocate. He's going to totally try to hire away Deb Newman from our show. Deb Newman, host of Back to Business and our small business expert every Wednesday. He's going to try to take her away. George, we can't let it happen. We can't afford to lose her. I don't know how much they're offering, but you're going to have to dip into that George Hale money.
Well, I go to Augusta quite frequently, so I can just meet up with Debbie down there, so it works out.
Oh, no.
That'll work.
We spent a lot of time with Matt Dunlap, and your predecessor. He spoke highly of you, so it is an independent group. It comes down political lines only in the sense that the party in power gets to pick. But once you get in there, any surprises since you've taken over from Matt? Anything because you were experienced, but anything that got your attention after you got into the job?
Well, yeah, Matt, when we were going through the transition process, he was very good in helping me kind of hit the ground running. And it's just amazing, really, the size of the Department of Secretary of State. You have over 500, or just about 500 employees, and Maine is one of 3 states in the country, that the others being Michigan and Illinois, where the Secretary of State has jurisdiction over the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. And the amount of time that is required to manage that aspect of the agency is really tremendous. And, of course, when you couple that with election issues, with the legislature itself, constituent issues, it's a very, very busy office. But there are terrific people that work for me and with me. And I just feel very fortunate to be in this position. And one of the other, before we went on the air, Rick and I were talking about one of the other issues that's coming out of the legislature right now, and that is going to be heard next Monday in Augusta, and it's a bill that we've submitted dealing with the stresses on the election process, and it's LD 1376, and it's called an act to preserve the integrity of the voter process here in the state of Maine. And what this bill is going to do is 2 things. For example, absentee balloting in Maine since 2000 has been for any reason at all. You don't need any reason to vote absentee. In 2000, there were 10% of the people voting absentee. In 2008, 32% of the people voting absentee. And then in 2010 in Bangor, for example, 60% of the people were voting absentee. That's a lot of people coming in. That's a good thing, but it's a tremendous stress on the system. You couple that with same-day registration, election day registration, and the clerks in the towns and cities around the state who are already conducting their normal business of issuing vital records, of city council meetings and so forth, are trying to prepare for elections while they have a steady stream of, an increasing stream of people coming in to request absentee ballot applications. They have another stream of people coming in to register to vote. So what we're proposing to do is to back this up 2 business days so that at Thursday at 5 o'clock before the election, we would stop registration except for people who maybe have moved within the town or city within the 2 days before the election. We would stop sending out absentee ballot applications. We would continue to receive them, obviously. But what we're hoping to do is to kind of relieve the stress on this system and give the clerks in the towns and cities the opportunity to prepare for the elections, because when someone comes in to register to vote, for example, they have to, currently, if it's on election day, they have to allow them to vote right away without the opportunity to check and make sure that they are, in fact, residents of the city where they're trying to vote. Plus, they're trying to manage the absentee ballot voting and applications coming in and out during the day. And I think that the stresses are getting great enough on the system that we're very close to maybe having some breakdowns on Election Day. And I think it's time that we kind of lean forward and try to address these stresses by working with the clerks and try to give them just a couple of days of breathing room before the election. So this is going to, you'll read a lot, I'm sure, about this bill. I know that there will be great passion on both sides of it, but that's something that will be coming up on Monday, and I just wanted to mention that to your listeners.
I'm just stewing it over in my head right now, and I can't imagine why someone would be necessarily upset that we would give a little more wiggle room to our clerks in our towns and our cities that need to deal with such matters, Charlie. George and I are recalling the vote in Bangor this week on the arena issue, where I think 19% of those that did cast a vote cast it absentee. They cast it ahead of time. Who wouldn't like the idea of maybe giving our clerks more of the means and the wherewithal to take care of what is the most precious right we have as an American or as a Maine citizen, and that is to vote?
Well, I think that you brought up a good point on the absentee ballots. Nearly 15% of all absentee ballots were issued during the 2 business days before the election in 2008. And, when you're looking at the number of people who are continuing to vote absentee, which is a great thing, it's again, when you have 15% of that in the last 2 days, and if you think about it, when people are coming in to register, they're coming in to absentee vote. Most of the towns and cities don't have the budgets these days to have the staff available, and they're continuing to do all of their normal duties. There's a lot of stress on that system, and I just happen to believe that if we try to be a little bit proactive and really balance the need to make sure that people have the ability to vote, and we try to encourage as many people to vote, I think if we just back it up 2 days and work very hard to make sure that people know that the deadlines have changed, I believe people will gladly adjust their patterns, if you will, and register a little bit earlier. And if you think about it, you back it up 2 days, people still have, if you take holidays and weekends out, they probably still have 340 days a year where they can come in and register to vote. So people still have ample opportunities to vote. We're just asking to adjust a couple of days so that the clerks in the towns and cities can have the ability to run their elections efficiently and securely and protect the right to vote.
Yeah, it probably will get some pushback in towns like Orono and Waterville and places like that, but we'll see who pushes back. There was a provisional voting procedure in this. This is the nutting bill, that there is a federal act, and this would allow a person who has registered to vote but whose name was omitted from the voting list to have a provisional ballot.
That's right. And George, I'm glad you brought that up, because let's say, for example, George Hale goes in to vote. They say, you're not registered, and maybe your voter registration got stapled to or somehow stuck to another voter registration card. They can't find your registration, but you say, listen, I've been voting here for 50 years. I know I'm registered. What you can do is sign an application and say, yes, I'm registered to vote here, and you'll be allowed to vote a provisional ballot. And then what will happen is that within the 3 days after the election, which all towns and cities have 3 days to report the results to the Secretary of State's office, that would give the clerk the time to go back and say, oh, yes, here's George's application right here. Then they would vote your provisional ballot, and that the vote total would be changed to reflect that. So, and the act that George is talking about is the Help America Vote Act, and that requires a provisional ballot system.